popular. There's a lot of people who would have really liked to have come today, but are too busy or working or got an appointment. So we hope it's okay that we've recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, if you don't mind just turning your camera off, that would be great. But everybody else, if you're okay, we'll be sharing this after the session. Okay, Pippa, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Sorry, I'm just going to be letting people in at the same time. So I've got to have an eye on two things at once. So first of all, I need to say I am not a techie person, but I am doing the presentations for some people. So please forgive me if there is a bit of a pause sometimes and I get things a little bit wrong. So communication. As Katie has just said, communication is everything for everyone. As human beings, it's what we do. We communicate with each other. I found out, over 40 years ago now, when I had a son with very complex impairments, including a communication impairment, just how important communication was. Sadly, I lost my son when he was 15, but those 15 years taught me so much. Kim did not have a formal system of communication, and he wasn't interested in learning any alternative forms of communication. He just wanted to communicate in his own sweet and wonderful way. And what I learnt was that as long as he was valued as a human being, and that he was in a loving relationship where he felt supported, then his communication was startlingly beautiful and very subtle. And so he introduced me to the world of alternative communication, and actually how speech is not our main form of communication. We communicate through our body language, through our expression, through many other ways. And although speech is the dominant form in our culture, it's not the only form. Katie, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the session. The Bringing Us Together session. I'm co-founder of Bringing Us Together, also co-founder of a charity that you're going to hear about with Joe from One Voice. And communication has been the key in our life. I've got 6 children and they're all in their 20s now. You're going to hear from Nadia, so I don't really have to tell you much about why communication is important to us. But I've been involved in the world of alternative communication for nearly 30 years now, and helped set up the charity One Voice, and have played a part in some national strategic work around communication for all over the years. So this session is really, really important for me personally, and it's been great to see the response, because we know it's so important for so many people. And we're going to have some inspiring and really interesting, thought-provoking talks from people who use alternative communication methods. We're going to be hearing from family members and from 2 organisations involved in the world of communication. So our first speaker is Nadia. And I'm really pleased to be able to introduce, it feels strange to introduce my own daughter, who's got a lot to say on her communication aid device. And over to you, Nadia.
Hi, my name is Nadia Clark. I live in Halifax, West Yorkshire with my family and my dog called Ted. Fingers crossed I will shortly be moving out of the family home and into my own place. I am proud to be disabled and deaf. I use alternative and augmentative ways to communicate, which is known as AAC, rather than speech. I use my communication aid to talk to people. I wear a cochlear implant which gives me some hearing, and I also rely heavily on lip reading and British Sign Language, which is my first language. I have had direct payments since I was 6 years old, and I manage a small team of personal assistants. I like walking with my family and dog in the countryside, going to music festivals and gigs, eating out, going to the theatre and watching films. I am passionate about disability rights and keeping up to date with the news and politics. My biggest passion is travel, and I work as a travel consultant. I have been to some amazing places. Now you know a bit about me. I will talk to you about my experience of British Sign Language, BSL, and using AAC throughout my life, and what helped to build my confidence. I believe that education and communication begins way before nursery and school. It starts at home as a baby and toddler, and learning with your family. As a toddler, my mum would write words of everyday objects on stickers in each room. My home would be covered in pictures and photos to help me learn. Although I am deaf, my parents did not discover this until I was 2 years old. My mum used to sing and read to me as a baby. I couldn't hear this, but unknown to my parents, this taught me lip reading skills from a very young age. I also learned a lot from my parents' body language and facial expressions. We did a lot of role play when I was little, for example, pretending the sofa was an aeroplane or beach. We had great fun. When I was a bit older, my mom encouraged me and my brothers and sisters to do a circle time. We would sit together and take it in turns to say nice things about each other. This was usually when we'd been naughty and fallen out. I now know that family time like this is really important. It taught me about people's emotions, understanding facial expressions and body language, taking turns, and how it feels when people listen to me. I was brought up in a very busy and inclusive family, and my parents worked really hard to give me the same opportunities as my brothers and sisters. They believed in human rights and the rights to communicate. We were all encouraged to talk to each other in lots of different ways, and sign language became a natural part of our lives. My family quickly learned to read my facial expressions and the subtle changes in my body language. This allowed them to understand when I was communicating my feelings and emotions. They all knew when I was happy, sad, excited, angry, or fed up. I want to stress that this is communication. If you can read when your child is happy or sad, you are both communicating together. It is so important to watch your children closely. I often hear people say, "My child cannot communicate," but I really believe that all children can, and do, communicate. We are all unique, so our communication methods are also unique. Being deaf, it was important for me to learn about the cause and effect of things. I would use special toys known as switch toys to help me develop this understanding. I was soon taught the importance of being able to sign yes and no. This allowed me to communicate with different people and to be able to answer their questions. Once the child can sign or communicate yes and no, it means they have a way to express their views, wants, and wishes in a way that is easier for others to understand. When I was 2, the nursery teacher thought I might be deaf, as I wouldn't listen to short stories. My mom took me to see a specialist consultant for tests. He told my mum that I was profoundly deaf and would not be able to hear a pneumatic drill if I walked past one. This was a shock and really upsetting for my mum initially. My mum had spent time singing and reading to me, and it was upsetting for mum to realize that I had never heard her voice. However, maybe this was a blessing for me because my mum has a really bad singing voice. Haha. At nursery, they introduced the use of basic Makaitan, which helped me start learning to sign. Soon after nursery, my family started to learn BSL. When I was 5 years old, I got my first communication aid. At first, I hated it. I refused to use it. I didn't know how to write English because I use sign language, which is visual. So how on earth could I talk using my communication aid? However, my parents gave me daily encouragement to use it, a little at a time. I remember my mother was really strict. I called her a witch. She would also make me use my communication aid and tell me that if I didn't use it, she would throw it out of the window, or give it to poor children in Africa. Now I'm older, I can see how important this was for me, and to be supported to use my communication aid at every given opportunity. In between being a witch, my mom gave me lots of praise for using it. Positive reinforcement is really important. I want you to know that it has taken me hours, days, years to learn to use my communication aid, and I'm still learning. Without a communication aid, I would have no voice. All my thoughts and feelings would be trapped in my head. My AAC, known as a Dynavox, allows me to communicate and interact with the world around me. I feel so lucky to have a voice. I grew up going to weekend events, run by the charity One Voice, which my mom set up 22 years ago with a speech therapist called Tamsin. I was surrounded by other AAC users and older disabled role models, which inspired me and made me want to be a confident AAC user. I met many lifelong friends there, including Gregor and Jemima. Gregor is speaking next, but he won't be as good as me. Haha. We grew up together and it was important having such good friends who also use AAC. I went to mainstream primary and secondary schools with my 5 brothers and sisters. The teachers were fantastic and I had amazing support staff who communicated with me using BSL. Since leaving education, I have completed a lot of training courses, including recently, an international 3-month disability equality course, over lockdown. I also have a qualification in mentoring, which has helped me to become a mentor to other young people, and help them develop their own skills and confidence. I know how important it is to have role models. My personal assistants must have great communication skills. We do training to support my team to understand deaf awareness and the importance of communication. For example, writing today's talk has taken me and my PAs many hours to complete. My PAs have to be very aware of my body language and facial expressions, and everyone needs to be really focused on me so that they don't miss out on any of my communication. I feel proud of myself for overcoming many of the barriers I have faced. I feel along with my own focus and drive. I have been lucky, because as you've just heard, throughout my life I have had good communication partners, excellent role models, a loving family and a witch, and people who understand the power of having a voice. My main message to you today is, Keep believing in your young person, have fun and enjoy their communication journey with them. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Nadia. That was awesome. Great, thank you so much. And now over to your very, very close dear friend. Double trouble, and over to Gregor. Welcome, Gregor.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, what I'm going to have to do, Gregor, is make you the host. And then if you give it back to me when you're finished. So I've made you the host.
Hello, my name is Gregor Gilmore. I have athetoid cerebral palsy. I use an electric wheelchair to get around. I use a communication aid to talk. My mum and P.A.s can understand a few words that I can say, but not much. When I was little, I used picture charts to select which toy I wanted. As I got older and started primary school, I used a Pixbook. This was similar to the picture charts, but it has lots of pages for food, people and places. This was good, but as my vocabulary grew, so did the book, and it became very bulky and heavy to carry around. So I am told anyway. I got my first high-tech device at the age of 6. It was symbol-based and had about 8 cells. By the age of 9, my mum removed the symbols as I could read really well. My mum always knew that I could read, as when I was little and she read to me, I would kick her when she got a word wrong. Having a device gave me independence. I could communicate my wants and needs independently. I used head switches to control my first device. This was good, but took a long time and used to make my neck hurt. attended Beaumont College, which is a specialist residential college. From the ages of 17 to 20, they had an amazing speech and language team. They knew that I was capable of communicating faster, so they tried a range of devices and access methods. I now use direct access with the keyguard. I can type 4 times faster than when I was switch scanning. This has opened up a whole world of work and further education. Having a voice is so important. It is your identity. It allows you to be who you are. Voice your opinions, make requests, and express yourself. If I did not have a voice, no one would get to see my cheeky personality. I would miss out on so much, like friendships, work, and education. I would be told what I am having to eat, where I am going, and what I am doing, rather than requesting it. My voice means everything to me. It gives me freedom, independence, and a bright future. Communication comes in all forms. Just because someone does not have spoken speech, it does not mean that they are not capable of communicating. Whether they use a high-tech device like mine, low-tech, like picture of letter charts, sign language, hand or facial gestures, they are all ways that people can express themselves, and they should be helped and supported as much as possible, and most importantly, listened to. The struggles that AHC users face when communicating are people trying to finish our sentences for us, or guessing what we are trying to say, leaning over us, and reading our screens rather than waiting for us to say it. Sometimes it takes us so long that when we have constructed our sentence, the conversation has moved on, and we miss out on adding what we wanted to say. My top tip for communicating with an AHC user is, give them time and listen. We have a lot to say. We just need your time and patience. This is a letter that I wrote when I started high school to help people to communicate with me. Having a device has changed my life completely. It allows me to live my life to the fullest. I have a proper paid job. I work as an AHC mentor, helping other less competent AHC users to use their devices. Having this job gives me a real sense of purpose. I am a role model and trustee for the charity One Voice. I help out research projects at universities and deliver training packages, as well as enabling me to have all these work opportunities. It has enabled me to get an education. I recently went back to college to redo my GCSEs to get to a level C. I enjoy sport. Having a voice has allowed me to fully participate in activities such as bocce, where I need to communicate with my team mates. Building relationships with people would not happen without my device, and friendships are important to me. My device really is my life.
Thank you so much, Gregor. That was fantastic. Really, really interesting and informative. Thank you for taking the time to write that and show us your PowerPoint as well.
Gregor, could you now switch the hosting back to me?
Great.
Thank you, Gregor. I am just letting a few more people in. So welcome to those of you who are arriving now. And we are going to go on. I'm going to share this screen with you, and Joe, it is going to be over to you. Just find your presentation. There you go, Joe.
Okay, it's a very brief presentation, but first of all, thanks for inviting me. My name's Joe, and I do all the admin for a charity that Katie actually set up 21, 22, 23 years ago. And this actually on this slide here, the girl in the bottom left-hand corner is my daughter, Eva. That was taken a few years ago. She's now 15. And that was at one of the One Voice weekends that we went to. But I just wanted to briefly talk as a parent, how for us as a family, it's the support that's been really fundamental, and where you can get that support to help you on your communication journey. For us, that happens to have been through One Voice, which for us has played a fundamental part of our lives, and as Nadia and Gregor were saying, it's about having access to role models, other families who've been there, other people who get it, even the wider things of the practicalities of how people have communicated. I remember when Eva was young, a bit like Nadia and Katie, we printed out loads of symbols, we had them all over the house. Our speech and language therapist said, oh, give us a list of what you want and we'll print out some pages for you. So I sent them through a list, and they just said, oh, there's too many, we can't possibly do that. So you're instantly restricting your children's communication. We can go on to the next one. So who are One Voice briefly? It's a registered charity started by Katie and Tamsin, who's a speech and language therapist. And the aim is to support and provide networking and support for those who use alternative communication. If we go on to the next one, please. So in terms of who we obviously have children, young people and adults who use alternative communication. We also recognise the importance of other family members. Eva's got 2 brothers, younger brothers, and they're very much involved with the events. And we do have professional speech and language therapists who come along and volunteer and help at our events. If you move on to the next slide, please. So what we do is in typical times, we have an annual National Residential Weekend. They're on hold at the moment. We normally do a one-day event prior to Communication Matters. We've, over this year, developed online events which have worked quite well, and what's nice is we're still attracting new people, and also that's enabled us to recognise that we have a whole range of members who use different methods of communication, ranging from low tech all the way up to high tech. And what we found by trialing a few events works really well is offering activities specifically for those who are less confident in their AAC use. So it might be that we send out resources in advance, which are low tech, that people can use to join in the activities. But at the same time, we've got an awful lot of people like Nadia and Gregor who are very experienced and really value the opportunity just to chat and catch up with their friends. So we're actually using the Zoom breakout room feature, managing to hold parallel sessions, which work quite well. In normal times, we have a branch network, again, that do ad hoc events. We're also taking the time to develop our role model program further. And we've done some training in conjunction with Communication Matters. And the idea is that we'll be able to offer a buddy system, and again, online works really well for that because it reduces the barriers of having to travel everywhere, and so that works well. And we do have a newsletter, but we're all about creating opportunities to get together, to learn from each other. If we just move briefly on, please. So very quickly, you can see a picture of Gregor there. So we've got a board of trustees, a range of experience. What is nice is that it is well, a range of parents, siblings, speech and language therapists, and we've got Gregor and Helen, who are both AAC users, and again, lots of volunteers. So if you just again skip on, please. So very briefly, some of the feedback that we have from parents is just saying it's a wonderful way of supporting what can be a very isolating disability. I won't read all those out. And then if we just skip on to the next one, please. So the plans are really, we would love, I think we know there are more people out there who would benefit from One Voice than what we currently reach. It's about still trying to reach out to new people. We will continue with our online events. As soon as possible, we will resume our in-person events, and just do more really. But I think everybody's journey is individual, and what's important to you will be different. As Katie and Pippa both said, for me, the communication is the key part of Eva's disability. It is the one thing that unless you can put things in place to give them that level of communication, means that they're not involved in anything. You don't know what they want to do. So for us, it's been One Voice. So whatever it is for you, I would really encourage you to try and find that local support group, where you can ask questions, get advice from people who've been there before. It isn't a quick fix. It takes time. It takes a long time. Eva's 15. Alongside the communication is the literacy skills. It's taken us quite a while to get where we are, but she will now spend a lot of time WhatsApping her One Voice friends. So yeah, so find the people that are sort of your tribe. I always think One Voice for us is our tribe. So thank you, Katie, for setting it up. But that's me done.
Thank you, Jo. That was so great to hear, and it's amazing that it continues. And I think the biggest achievement we had, well, there's two. One is that it won the Guardian Charity Awards in 2006, just with volunteers, which was amazing. But the other achievement is the young people, isn't it, who've been part of that organisation and were motivated by other disabled people. and then they've grown up to be those next generation of role models. So I think that's really powerful. So thank you, Joe, and thank you, Nadia and Gregor, for showing us an alternative way of communicating. Before we just go on to Charles and Geraldine, who again are going to be demonstrating and sharing their experiences of alternative communication. After that, we'll have a break because Katrina is doing an amazing job of sign language interpreting, but she will need a break. So we'll have, Katrina, if it's okay with you, a 5-minute break after Geraldine and Charles.
Thank you, that's great.
And when people do speak, if they could speak quite, not slowly, but just slow it down slightly from a very fast pace. Thanks, everybody. Charles and Geraldine, it's amazing to have you here. And it's been great to have spent time getting to know you, Charles, over the last few months. Over to you, Charles and Geraldine.
Thank you. What I will say, it's quite interesting, all these various methods of communication. Charles has got autism. He's been non-verbal and he's always been at special schools, etc. My biggest thing is that no one listens. We did a Hannon course. Charles has done Makaton. We've done PECs. I watched a program on Sunrise. He's done an AAC, but there was no interest in getting anyone to actually learn how to use it and set it up. And at a National Autistic Society school, we had to keep asking for it. They locked it in, the staff locked it in the staff room because it was so expensive. We got Charles a iPad and we used ProLoQ2 to go. Again, it was not always used because it upset other people in the class. And what it was used for is for Charles could actually ask for what he wanted. And he would use it quite happily, say, I want a drink, but it never ever took it further to say what he wanted to drink. And then, and he'd always been said by teachers and psychologists that he was very intelligent, he wanted to learn, etc. But nothing was ever done. Until at the age of 20, we discovered 3 letters called RPM, which stands for Rapid Prompting Method. And well, there is a video, but first of all, so that everybody sees what it is, I'll hold this up so that you can actually see where he's pointing. Over to you, young man. C-H-A-N-K, thank, Y-O-U, thank you. I-A-M-M-C-H-A-R-L-E-S. I am Charles. T-H-I-S, this I-S is S-U, where C-H, such, A-N-N-I-M-P-O-R-T-A. Oh, don't look over there. A-N-T, important. H-A-V-I-N-G, having. A-B-I-L-I-T-Y. It's so important having an ability. Do you want to carry on? T-O-2-T-A. I know you're watching them. L-K, talk. T-O-2-O-T-H-E-R-S. Do you want to say anything more? Or do you want Pippa to show the video? No. What? Y-E-S. Okay. Okay, Pippa. Oops.
You okay, Pippa?
I'm sorry, was that not working?
No.
No. Let me try again.
Okay, that's great. And thank you, Charles, for also showing us how long it takes and also how important it is that you have good support to be a alternative communication aid user, and how much patience it takes you, Charles, like Nadia and Gregor, to use that communication device.
What Charles has commented on during the other talks is the training of communication is important, and it's not only for RPM that we have to learn.
Yeah. Pippa, it's still not showing.
No, it was working earlier, so I can only apologise for this. I'm going
You want me
to...
to? I'll
I
read it.
think you need to start the video before you screen share, rather than try and open it once you're screen sharing. I think that might be the thing.
Okay, let me try that. Thank you for that top tip.
We can always take 5-minute break, or it's...
I can read it.
Thank you,
It'll be
Geraldine.
much easier and quicker. Right, Charles, is that all right? So Charles wrote this some time ago to tell the story of nobody who became somebody. The time of my life when I was not anything was not pleasant. The fact that everyone spoke to me as if I was stupid so angered me that I tried to stop them in the only way I knew. Made me violent, so that made me even more unpopular. That meant I had so much rubbish to deal with that I became more aggressive in the moments when I was not able to tell those looking after me what I wanted. The opinions of those very stupid people wanting to say that I was not understanding the things I was hearing. I put up with so much to not be treated in the way I deserved, that it was the best thing ever when Mom took me to meet Alex. I had a very hard time since that day to get the life and education, which is making such a difference to how I'm able to manage my life now. How I overcame that dreadful life was all down to RPM. My life I had lived until that time when I met Alex is what I imagine hell must be like. I'd never had any thought that it would get any better, but hoped that it would. I was so amazed when Alex showed me a letterboard. She then taught me a lesson and showed me that I could answer questions by slowly pointing to the letters. I was at last able to show that I understood when people were talking. I had at last got the chance I had been waiting for so many years. Then Charles, what RPM is, it's education, and you do a conversational lesson to suit the child, and slowly at the end of that you will then get the open communication. So Alex used to teach him and then give him opportunities to do some creative writing, and it wasn't many months after he'd started and he wrote The Thinkers. Long ago everything was different. People were able to talk using words. However, some people couldn't talk. They were the silent people. They could talk, but they could still think. All the loud people didn't know that the silent people could think, so they treated them like fools. The silent people had no way of showing that they understood everything that was happening. One day everything changed and the silent people were silent no more. They started to spell out their thoughts on a letterboard. Everybody knew that they were smart and clever, finally. The silent people changed their names to the thinkers. Never underestimate silent people because they are thinkers. T-H-A-T, that I-S is S-T-I-L-L, still S-O, so T-R-U. Well, go back to U, U and E. That is still so true. T-H-A-N-K, thank, Y-O-U, thank you, F-O-R, for, L-I-S-T-E-N-I-N, Gee, thank you for listening. What do you want to get out of this day? S O so W I S A so whoosh T H A T that N O T not X not S O so I M P O R T A N T. So important. You've got to look at the board. Important. T H A T. That's T H E V A U T H O R I T I E S. So was the authorities. T O O K took R P M R P M S E R. Well done. I O U S L Y. So wish the authorities took RPM seriously.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, Geraldine. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of very positive feedback from people, Charles, and it's so important that you've got your voice and you're sharing your story with other people. It's really important. Thank you so much for contributing today. And it's been great listening to you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to have just 5 minutes so Katrina can get a break. Everybody can just go and grab a drink. And then we do have a lot more to go through for the next section. We're going to be hearing from Hannah, Yvonne, Tasha's going to be speaking, and Amanda from ICANN will be our last speaker. So do come back. Pippa, are you okay with?
Yep, I think so. I was just trying to work out a way so that I could do Yvonne's presentation smoothly, because she sent me the script as well. So, but I think I've done it.
Great.
So.
Should we stop the record? Oh no, probably better not stop the recording because it might not stop.
We might not be able to put it back together again.
Okay.
How are we doing for time, Katie? Let me just check that.
We're great on time. Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
It's good to be here. It's good to get here before the end. So yeah.
Yeah, and we've had our AAC users, but we'll be sending out the recording, and you'll be able to catch up with 3 amazing AAC using adults. So
oh, fantastic.
you'll catch that up later. And we've just got a break for a couple of minutes.
Okay,
brilliant.
brilliant.
And the interpreter's having a rest, but thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for being here. Hi, Hannah.
Hello, Katie.
Hello.
Oh gosh, it's the first time I met Nadia, and it's fantastic. Her speech, so lovely, and everybody's here.
Yeah, it's been some great speakers, the people with the lived experience. Okay.
Hannah, I'm going to get your presentation up on the screen now, and I'll just put it at the first slide. And then when Katie will give you the nod when we're ready to start, she'll let you know, but I'll just get it all ready now.
We've got a question for Charles and Geraldine, and I'll ask Marlin, it's a really good question. Charles and Geraldine, would you mind writing it in the chat? If you don't mind the answer. Can you see the question? You're just on mute.
Sorry, I'm saying, no, just for a second. This is where I would fall on Susan Finnis, because I'm just a mother of one child, and Susan has got loads of experience and can explain.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. If Susan could respond to the chat. And great to have you here, Susan. Thank you so much. And welcome back, everybody. With your cups of tea, you can see a few mugs. And we're going to hand over to the wonderful Hannah, who I've only got to know in the last 6 to 9 months. And Hannah spoke beautifully at one of our courses that we've been running with NHS England. So Hannah, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Katie, and hello to everybody. So yeah, my name is Hannah Otu, and I'm a parent of a severely autistic young man, really challenging and nonverbal. And I'm also a founder of an SEN school in Africa. I do so many other things, but today we're talking about communication. So that is what we're going to talk about. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of background about me and my family. We're a family of 4, and our cultural background is from Africa. So I realized that it's over 30 years ago since I came to the UK that communication was quite, it wasn't a big problem because Ghana was a British colony and we spoke English, but there's slight differences in communication. So this is where I see that every speech I give, I need to bring a bit of the culture and diversity into it, because we see that people from different cultures and different backgrounds, based on their language and culture, sometimes our communication needs is slightly different. So that has to be taken into consideration. So yeah, I have my son Rex, who's down there, and then my husband and my daughter, who's now 20. And my son is 19. He's still nonverbal, but still using various communication tools, just as everyone has talked about. So just a quick one that whilst I had my own experiences of being a mother and going through the language difficulties, I also set up a school in Africa. And with that school, I had about almost 30 kids, but I was able to see over 400 children in Africa, where I got to learn the various communication differences. Those kids that came, some were non-verbal, some were verbal, some were different ranges of special needs. So it was my first experience, although I had seen only my son, who is non-verbal and severely autistic. I saw a wide range of communication needs. So as a parent, I got introduced to the wide range of communication needs that various kids have. Yeah. So next slide, please. So I realized that for me, in a parent perspective, trying to understand the whole world of communication, I grouped it into 2. Kids that are not verbal, like my son, that I try to, this is the main slide about those non-verbal kids and putting it in a simple form, because they are non-verbal, they really need some form of interaction, like has been said before with Gregor and Nadia. It needs maybe eye contact, body language, or signing, or using visual cues. So kids that are non-verbal has a whole world that needs to be looked after. And depending on each parent and their child, we always say it's very important to really know your child and know their communication needs, which is one of the most important things. So the next slide. Yeah, so the next one is the communication with those who are verbal. One thing I found out in the school and with many kids that I have seen is that although some kids are verbal, they still have communication needs. And those communication needs, some might have echolalia. I'm not a speech therapist or professional, but with experience as parents, I got to know that although when some kids are verbal, it's still difficult to express themselves. And I also recently found also that with some kids too, based on emotional needs or based on their autistic needs or different issues, although they can talk, they find themselves that they are mute in certain situations. So they don't really want to talk with some people on certain situations. So there's a whole wide range of communication needs that I saw, although with those who are verbal and those who are non-verbal. And that was quite interesting to take note of. Next slide, please. Yeah, so with all the various kinds of communication, I try to express myself in a way that families who have kids and do not understand the whole range of communication needs, we can say we group communication into two different aspects, which that's what I can see, whether they are not verbal or non-verbal. There is receptive communication, which mostly is as parents or teachers or others giving instructions. So constantly give instructions to us kids with special needs. They have to take those instructions, do this, do this, do that all the time. See, but what is very important that I see is that most of the time, our children and young people maybe are not able to express themselves. See, so that expressive side is the most important, so that they can express their needs, whether they are verbal or non-verbal. And that is what I think is very important, to be able to give them the support that they need. And that is why there is a lot of communication devices that we're talking about. But it's a very good understanding for every parent to see that you need to know your child and find various ways by which they could express themselves and not always taking instructions from you, the parent. Next slide, please. Yeah, so like I said before, it's vital to be able to communicate our needs. So that is the main thing that I think every young person or child wants their teacher, their parent, or everyone who works with them to be able to do. And then everyone's communication needs are unique. It's so unique that I think with my son, it had to take a long time. I had to use music, I had to use signing, we had to use visuals, and we had to use anything that is possible to combine in a way that would help him to be able to take up his communication, to be able to communicate with him. And because he was so addicted to food, he has a OCD with food, we had to start communication using food first. You see, so this comes in with the emotional and well-being aspects, that sometimes it's very important for kids who have difficulty in communicating, maybe to really make sure that they are mentally, emotionally, and physically ready. So some people will not communicate in things that is not of interest to them. So that is really very important from my experience to see that we need to put all the holistic needs together to be able to get communication running very smoothly. Next slide. Yeah. So communication for an autistic child from a parent perspective is that it's important for them to have visuals because they learn a lot visually. I keep saying that even all of us need to work on visuals, because anytime I go to the airport or I go somewhere and I need to use the ladies, it's easier for me when I see the pictures on there, whether it's gents or ladies. So visuals are very important. And also Makaton signing was what we used, which was really good for my autistic son and everyone, because it helps them to sign and it gives an alternative when there are no pictures around. And also it's a way that you can also express yourself. So pointing, actions, and visual cues, body language, and so those ones that could be used. And then social stories were also things that were also very important, to be able to tell maybe what is coming, you know, what they should expect, or anything that you think you want to talk about. See, so this is one good aspect of communication that I know we have a team of specialists here who are talking about it. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what are some of the practical and everyday communication techniques that as a parent, we saw that is really good. I don't have all the visual cues here, but I know for every parent and child, they do have the support of their school or speech and language therapists. So the best thing is for parents, like I said, to know your child very well. And one of the most important things, if they have to use visual techniques or use Makaton signing, and to make sure that it's part of their everyday daily needs. So it's just it's a lifestyle, it has to be part of you. What do you do every day? It has to be maybe simple things like this, whereby you have to brush your teeth, wash your mouth, and then it's time for breakfast. So it's something that I really do with my parent group. I have a little parent group that we try to train parents to design a special needs setting within the home and then bridge the gap between school and home. So one of the good things we did is that we linked with the widget software. So those who do widgets are able to have their own personal accounts and design it according to their unique family needs. So widgets just recently introduced a diversity set of resources to be able to incorporate people from the Black, Asian, and ethnic minority backgrounds, so that we can put our unique communication needs within it. So this is ways to start it. Practically start from your everyday stuff and what your child really likes. So that's very important. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so I think it's finished. That is me. And I think through all the experiences that I've got from my school, from parents here, I try to do a lot that will involve parents with my SEN parenting, because I realize parents are very important. We have seen today how all our young ones are really praising their parents, that if it wasn't the help of parents, they wouldn't be there or where they are now. So it's important for parents to learn all of this. And then also, we just have an organization that we just set up to specifically design what each child's needs are, and that will include communication. See, so communication is very important, and as parents, I think one of the most important things we can do for our children and for all of us is to study their unique communication needs and then cherry pick any of these resources that are available to suit your child's needs. So I will finish my speech by just quoting what a scholar said. And I think it's not the right wording, but what a scholar said about communication is that if anything has to be taken away from me in this world, it's only one thing I would like to retain, and that is the power of communication. Because with that, I'll be able to get everything else that I need. So communication is very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It's so helpful, and I love the quote at the end. And it's not until you have a child and you're supporting them and finding all their nuances that you really get to understand about speech and the importance of having a voice. So thank you for that, and your school sounds great, and thank you for sharing it. And another parent speaker now who needs little introduction, and we're so pleased to have Yvonne here with us, and bringing us together has been working very closely with Yvonne over the pandemic and Challenging Behaviour Foundation. So we're really pleased that Yvonne is able to share with us some of her experiences and the work that she does.
Thank you, Katie. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thanks so much to you and Pippa for inviting me. It's made my week already. What a lovely way to start the week. Now, as you probably know, I'm Yvonne Newbold and I've got 3 children. My son, Toby, who's the one on the right. Can you do the next slide, Pippa? Are you okay?
Pippa, the slides for some reason aren't showing.
Right, that's it. Lovely.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got 3 children. Toby's the one on the right. He's the one in the orange jumper and the curly hair. And he was born with a syndrome that's so rare, he's still the only one they've found who's ever had it. It made him desperately ill as a small child, and we nearly lost him several times. It was made very clear that he wasn't expected to make it beyond very early childhood. Those early years were traumatic for both of us. He spent nearly all his first 6 or 7 years in hospital, and that meant that so did I. I never left his bedside as a resident parent. Next slide. Against all the odds, Toby's now 27. And although he'll always have a lot of extra physical and cognitive challenges, as well as very complex medical needs, he has a great life and he lives in a lovely care home a mile away from our house. One of Toby's challenges is that he's non-verbal, but that doesn't mean he hasn't got a lot to say. As Toby's health began to stabilise a little, when he was still at primary school age, his behaviour went right off the scale. He had a fantastic team around him, and I asked everyone for help, but nobody seemed to know what to do. His behaviour was getting progressively worse, and he was becoming physically violent towards the whole family. He was smashing up rooms and becoming very controlling. This sometimes went on for several hours a day, and it went on for years, but no one could tell me why or what I should do to help him to become more settled. Of course, this was in the days when the internet was still in its infancy and social media hadn't yet been invented. So I didn't have access to the support or the information that's so readily available to our community now. But I did keep asking for help. And as I asked, the narrative slowly changed. It became my fault. I must be the one doing something wrong. I must be the one with the terrible parenting skills. When a child's behaviour becomes extreme, family life becomes incredibly difficult. At exactly the time parents need help, instead they get blamed, judged, and made to feel as if it's them that are failing. So at the very time a parent needs to be feeling capable and competent and able to find a way to manage their child's behaviour, they're consistently being made to feel terrible and hopeless. Eventually, after nearly 10 years of some very frightening times, I began to get some answers and things began to fall into place. Until then, Toby had taught me so much about what communication really means. Next slide, please. So I knew that it included everything on this list: facial expressions, gestures, body language, tone of voice, spoken language as well as written language, symbols, music, silence, and sign language. Next slide. But nobody had ever told me that all behaviour was a form of communication too. In the end, I also learned that high levels of anxiety can also lead to extreme behaviours. Next slide. And that anxiety doesn't look a bit like what we might expect it to look like in children. Along with many people, I'd always assumed that anxiety was a passive word and that anxious children would be all of these things in this list. Next slide. Withdrawn, timid, shy, nervous, shaky, fidgety, worried, fearful, or apprehensive. It may well affect some children in this way, But actually, anxiety is more likely to lead to, next slide, lead to a child becoming aggressive, violent towards other people, destructive, self-harming, or very controlling. It's easier to understand the word anxiety if we substitute it for the word fear and focus on helping a child or young person to feel safe with the people close to them and, next slide, and the world around them. And if we can remember that for both adults and children alike, we become anxious when we feel unsafe in some way or when we feel threatened. Next slide. Once I began to understand that Toby's behaviour was his way of trying to communicate something, I also realised that as he became more anxious, stressed and emotionally heightened, his ability to communicate non-verbally significantly reduced. This was a game changer for us. Instead of responding to his behaviour as if he was deliberately being unkind, I began to try and work out what he was trying to tell me. Each time, the more possible ideas of reasons that I could think of, the quicker I was able to get to the bottom of it and help him in whatever way he needed me to. I stopped judging him and became curious towards what was going on instead. Next slide. Up until then, everyone, friends, families, other professionals, they'd all told me to implement the traditional parenting methods, you know, things such as sanctions, consequences, rewarding good behaviour and punishing bad. But that had never worked, and I just thought I wasn't any good at it. Over the years, I'd tried so hard to take on all this advice of the so-called experts. I parented harder and firmer and stricter and more harshly, but nothing made any difference. I honestly thought I'd tried everything, and I'd been told by everyone to go up and up and up and up in the same direction. I didn't know that there was another direction and that you could also go down and down and down as well. As soon as I started to do that and parent him more kindly, softly, more collaboratively and more respectfully, that's when the magic started to happen. That's when things got loads better and Toby became so much happier. I've since learned that traditional parenting methods simply don't work with children and young people who are frightened, distressed, confused and anxious. They're all based on parental power and control and asserting our authority. They're all about telling our children and young people exactly what to do and expecting total and immediate obedience. When a child or young person is behaving in difficult or dangerous ways because they're distressed and anxious, they need our compassion, our understanding, reassurance and acceptance. They need us to be kind and to be curious rather than to be harsh and judgmental. Next slide, please. Of course, as soon as we move away from using the traditional parenting strategies, other people are going to judge us and blame us. I was told all sorts of things, including that I was too soft, lazy, that I was spoiling Toby, being inconsistent, making a rod for my own back, and that I was weak. It was hard and I had to pretend I had a much thicker skin than I really do and just keep going. But what kept me going through it all was seeing how much better things were getting for Toby and how quickly. His difficult behaviour was lessening every day, but even better than that, he was happy in a way that he hadn't often been for several years. Next slide, please. It made me realise that what other people think doesn't matter nearly as much as rescuing your own child from their unhappiness. Next slide, please. Isn't it funny how other people find it so easy to judge us and jump to the conclusions that our parenting isn't really up to much, when in fact we're the ninja parents? We're doing advanced level parenting and coping with situations that would leave most others standing every single day. And yet somehow most people can't see it. Next slide. Also, if difficult or dangerous behaviour does happen, please try not to take it personally. Try and see it as your child or young person's attempt to communicate their fear, distress, anxiety, and how they just aren't feeling safe right now. Next slide. The actual word behaviour is a very negative one. So instead of thinking, how can I make my child behave well today? I started to think, how can I help my child feel safe, secure and happy? It was amazing how just shifting my thinking a little bit really helped me to see things with a completely different lens. Next slide. Toby's taught me so much over the years. Communication can be very hard, so it's very important to welcome any effort they make to connect with you. Maybe meet them where they are and join in with a way of communicating. You can have a lot of fun and build connections if you do. I've also learnt to be as non-judgmental as I possibly can be, and to always be kind and always be curious instead. Next slide. Going back to our family story with Toby, we were finally referred to a specialist service who understood behaviours in young people with severe learning disabilities a few months before Toby was due to turn 18. It was a paediatric service, and therefore we always knew that we were going to lose it on the day he turned 18. They nearly didn't accept our referral because they knew we wouldn't have long, less than 6 months. But luckily they did take us on. Once I changed my whole approach, Toby's behaviour came on in leaps and bounds. I'm inordinately proud of him and how far he's come and how happy he is nowadays. By the time his 18th birthday happened, things were so much better. We were able to have a party for 200 people. He that night and absolutely loved it and just wanted to hug everyone he saw. It was incredible. This was the same young man who 6 months beforehand we'd only been able to leave the house with him if there were 3 adults to keep him and everyone safe. The transformation and the speed in which it happened was astonishing. I'm sure you can imagine what a wonderful day his 18th birthday was. This was the young man who'd never been expected to survive beyond early childhood, and yet he'd made it all the way to adulthood, and he was finally so happy, so settled, and just enjoying life. It really did feel as if all our family birthdays and Christmases had come at the same time. I thought I'd never stop grinning. But sadly, the universe sometimes has other plans for us, though. His party was on a Saturday, and 5 days later, on the following Thursday, I was diagnosed with bilateral breast cancer, with 2 different and completely unrelated cancers, one on each side. I went through the long several months of cancer treatment, and then finally the scans that are supposed to show how well the treatment has worked when you get to the end of it, except mine didn't. The treatment hadn't worked. The cancer had spread to my spine. And although they don't like telling you too much at such a difficult hospital appointment, I absolutely had to know how long I had left, because I knew immediately I'd have to make some pretty difficult and heartbreaking decisions about Toby's future. So I asked and they told me. If I agreed to continue on long-term treatment and if everything went incredibly well, I might have as long as 2 more years to live. Next slide. So that day I needed a bucket list, and it was easy to know what needed to go on it. All I wanted to do was to use whatever time I had left to somehow make things easier for the next generation of families in our community. Next slide. I didn't quite know what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to write everything down that Toby had taught me over the years so that it wouldn't be lost. I started writing a book that afternoon and finished it 3 years later. It's called The Special Parents Handbook, and I never expected it to become an Amazon #1 bestseller, but it did. And then that led to me being invited to speak at medical conferences, then to run training courses and workshops, and things have just continued to snowball from there. Next slide, please. Much of the work I now do is with families and the staff who work with our community, and it's all about how to support children to move beyond their difficult and dangerous behaviours. Through online webinars, online training, and I'm also in the process of setting up a club for parents who'd like more ongoing support while they're implementing the new strategies and parenting approaches. As part of this work, I run a private Facebook group with over 8,000 family members who all have children who have a disability or an additional need and who also have difficult or dangerous behaviour. Next slide, please. As well as that, I do a lot of work at national policy and strategy level within NHS. These are just some of the advisory and steering groups that I belong to. Next slide, please. I'm doing 3 more webinars before the end of the school summer holidays, all on Tuesday evenings, but there are catch-up link replays if you can't join us live. Tomorrow night's one's all about change transitions and how they affect behaviour. In a couple of weeks, there's one about surviving the school summer holidays. And on the 20th of July, we'll be looking at how sensory issues can impact on behaviour too. Next slide, please. But one of the most heartwarming opportunities I've had over this past very difficult year was to work very closely with both Bringing Us Together and the Challenging Behaviour Foundation to form Frontline Families, where as parent-led organisations, we've tried to reach out as best we can to other families offering support. That's what makes today so special. This is the very first time that we've actually been able to properly work together, and it's absolutely lovely. So thanks, Pippa, thanks, Katie. Next slide, please. Here are just some of the Facebook platforms I run, including a private group for families, another one for dads, and another one for professionals. Additionally, there are 2 Facebook pages, one to learn more about anxiety-led behaviours and the other shares more general SEND information. And the last slide, if you just want to scroll through, is the book that I wrote as well. If you'd like a copy, I'm happy to sign it for you. One thing I always forget to say before I go, though, is that although I was told I had 2 years left to live, I'm still here 9 years later. I'm still on cancer treatment and still doing whatever I can for our community. Nobody quite knows why I'm still alive, but I'm still very happy to be here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Yvonne. That was tremendous. It was the great feedback for you. Yeah, no, thank you so much for finding us the time, and it's been really great. This is the second of our summer Frontline Family sessions, and it is, like you say, the first time we've worked together, even though we've been doing Frontline Families through the pandemic. So, and that was really informative. We will be sharing the slides, and we'll also be putting on links to everybody's presentations. And if you've got any YouTubes that you want to share as well, send us those and we'll be sending those out. So thanks very, very much, Yvonne. That was fabulous.
Thank you.
And the power of positive parenting as well. I'm going to hand over now to Tash. And Tash, you've got 10 minutes, if that's okay. And we've got to know Tash really well during our Zooms for over a year now, and it's been fantastic. Natasha's been a regular on our Zooms, and so this is really the first time, Tash, that we've asked you to do a talk, so it's great to have you with us. And I'm going to hand over to you. If you could come off mute, Tash.
Okay, okay. Hello, my name is Natasha. I am autistic and I have sensory disorders. I am a mum of one, a South Africa, and very big on autism rights. I'm here today to talk to you about sensory disorder. Most nights and days in my fantasy world, I am a rock star dancing the night away to loud music in the middle of enormous crowds, or dressing in my old fitted clothes whilst having a meal with others, which they choose with loud noise playing. For now, that is just a dream. It's my autism sensory disorder which stops me from doing those sometimes. It feels like I am a prisoner to them. Light, touch, sound, taste, smell, colour, patterns and temperature. Even my meal times at home can be hard for me. I like certain foods cooked the way every time. I am a typical autistic eater. From a young child, eating a ham sandwich on white bread every day, but one day, just for a few hours, the child refuses to eat, and everyone is upset. The nana had been to the house and that day had made the ham sandwiches exactly the same, but had cut it into squares and not cut it into triangles with the crust cut off. Knowing that everyone is individual, the tailoring the care certificate supporting autistic people is written by me with the hope that autistic people can get the type of care they all deserve. When you're talking to us, please use simple language with no complicated words. Lots of the time, small sentences work best with pictures. The best way to see if someone is happy or sad is by their body language. We like normality, be in control. That's why we struggle when going out. But I struggle with the background noise. Please always give us plenty of, ask us what we would like to wear. Last year I had an operation and got an infection and struggled to wear the clothes I always wear because now I feel that's too tight. Let us take our sensory toys with us. They always help us stay calm. Please let the autistic people always choose a favourite restaurant. But if they look withdrawn or on edge, ask us if it's too noisy in here, or shall we go to the bathroom? When you see them not enjoying their favourite food, ask them, does it not taste the same? For us, a slight change of ingredient might make this food taste differently. And it might even be that it's a different cook. Please never say you'll be all right. You'll all be all right. I have been able to share with you who I truly am in my sunglasses, where I wear, which block out the light, and also when I get overwhelmed, they help me to stay calm. But I struggle with eye contact, and also I love to wear my sparkly clothes, which I upcycle myself, sewing ribbon and bows on them, and make my own jewelry. So if anyone has a hobby, help us to do this. Please please feel free please feel free to completely make ask us if you want to make eye contact, and ask us it's okay if you can't. Thank you for listening, and one day I hope that equality, diversity, and to everyone can live in harmony. You didn't show any of the pictures. You didn't show any of the pictures.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tash. I couldn't get them up at the right time. But what I'll do, Tash has sent us.
I sent pictures to help, like this one, the same thing as what you showed before. And this one is a really good one. It shows like a sensory autism man.
Yeah. We will share these pictures. Yeah, we will send them round to everyone.
This is me, but I struggle with the headphones.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tash.
We'll send the pictures out with the handouts so everyone can see them. And Tash, that was absolutely brilliant. You got so much in there from your sparkly clothes, which I admired this morning, and your stunning earrings as well. Yeah, looking absolutely gorgeous. And you gave some really important messages that I'm certain that parents will really take on board, and hearing your lived experience is very, very important for all of us to understand about communication and about autism. So thank you for your really valuable talk. That was great, Tash, and on time. Perfectly timed. Tash, thanks a lot. Okay, we're going to hand over now to our last speaker. And we're really pleased that Amanda from ICANN has joined us today on this really important topic of communication. and she will tell us about the charity, and she'll also give some of her perspective on what you've heard, Amanda, I'm sure. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, hello everyone. I just joined about half an hour ago, so I haven't heard everybody speak, but it's been really fantastic to hear everyone's experiences and just so much information and practical information, which is just fantastic. So I hope some of what I say might be a bit repetitive, but I'm talking today as a professional, although I also have a son who has Down syndrome, who has very limited spoken communication. So sort of I'm wearing two hats. I'm here today as a professional, but also have some experience as a parent of a child with disability who has poor communication skills as well. So yes, just to give you some background information on ICANN, it's a children's communication charity, and it's over 130 years old. It was originally set up to support children with cognitive and some physical disability, and then it evolved into being the UK's leading communications charity. And we currently run 2 special schools and a range of programmes across the UK for all age ranges. So our different projects will range from sort of 0 to really up to the age of 25. And I think it's important as well to give you the contact details. So the charity has an inquiry service which you can contact via email or by phone, and they are very proactive and quick to respond. Throughout COVID, they've been extremely busy, and we've actually, because of the effectiveness of the inquiry service, we've now got additional funding. So there's now an additional people manning both the phone line and the inquiries email. So please do email in at any point, and they will either answer your inquiries directly, or they'll be able to refer you on to people you can help. So everybody, I'm actually I'm a speech and language therapist by trade, and I work as an advisor to ICANN, and then people who'll be responding to you will be speech and language therapists as well. So it's a great way of getting direct advice and support if you're struggling to get it in your local area. There's also a website which is really useful, and I've given you the link right through to the ICANN website. It's quite big because we have so many different projects and sort of bits to the organisation. So I've added the link that takes you right through to Talking Point, and Talking Point is the bit of the ICANN website that is particularly relevant for parents. So feel free to use that. Can I have the next slide, please? So here we go. Non-verbal communication. This just made me laugh. And like I said, apologies if a lot of what I say today you've already heard from sort of other perspectives, but hopefully I'll be able to bring some of it together. I just liked this Mr. Bean picture because it really sums up that non-verbal communication is what goes without saying. So we don't always need to have words in order to communicate with others. So can I have the next slide? And then can you click in as we go through? There we go. So here we go. Non-verbal communication is, so spoken communication really is a very tiny part of how we all communicate in everyday life. And just like Mr. Bean, every day we're using facial expression and eye contact, and we use touch, and we use proximity and distance and body language. And gesture. There's so many different ways that we communicate. Oh, can you pause there? Can you go back one slide? Sorry. There we go. So these are all ways that all children and young people and adults communicate with each other day to day. Even people without a disability will be using many of these ways of communicating. And when we talk about non-verbal communication, it doesn't necessarily mean that that individual is silent. That's sometimes the case, but very often people who are communicating non-verbally will vocalise, and they will use vocal volume and pitch and intonation to try and express how they're feeling, and also things like crying and laughing as well. So although non-verbal communication sounds like it might be quite silent, it isn't always. There can often be noise that accompanies it that also has meaning as much as the gesture and body language and other things on this slide. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. I think it's good to think about all all the things I've just described, you can really have very successful communication without necessarily using spoken language. And I think it's important. I think other speakers have already spoken today about thinking about why your child or why people communicate. And here on this slide, just some examples of the different things the reasons that we communicate. So we might want to ask questions, or we might want to label something to say what it is. We might want to respond to questions, comment, tell a story, say hello, goodbye. We might want to show something. And I think all of you, and a common theme that's come through all the people speaking today, has been the issue of behaviour. Very often, if someone can't communicate their needs and can't communicate what they want, or they can't, it must be very frustrating if you can't, oh, sorry, can you pop that one? If you can't communicate things that are important to you, be it your physical needs or your emotional needs or your social needs, then that can be very frustrating. And that's when we quite often see difficult behaviours and unhappy behaviours. In speech therapy, and in my role as a speech and language advisor and therapist, I often will be saying to parents and professionals that behaviour is always about communication. So never judge a child as bad or difficult, or a young person or adult as obstructive. Always look at the behaviour and assume that they're behaving in a particular way because they want to communicate something. So obviously, if you're non-verbal, then that's extremely difficult. Communication is multifaceted, and we want to often communicate really complicated messages. And that's where augmentative and alternative communication systems, or AAC, come in. And AAC can be high tech or low tech, but one of the overarching things for whether it's high tech or low tech or any AA system is that it's visual. So if you can move on to the next slide, please. So all AACs, all non-verbal communication systems, will have a visual element to them. And this is really a two-way system. So we often would put the emphasis on the person wanting to communicate things, but also one of the previous speakers was talking about receptive language, which is understanding and how people understand things, and using visuals can really help with understanding. So it's a two-way system. Often someone who's struggling to express and use spoken language or use their expressive communication, visuals will be a way that they can get their message across to you. But it's very often the case that that person will also be helped by you using visuals with them in order to allow them to understand more easily what you're saying, what you're trying to communicate. So it really is a two-way thing. And this is just rather a fun cartoon that gives you some examples. So for examples, I'm sure this will be familiar, particularly to a lot of parents here today, that visuals prepare students for transitions, so you can communicate things like first and then, or first and next. They help build independence. There's a lovely little person there saying, I did it myself. They help reduce anxiety. So if things are visual, for example, visual timetables, they can help prediction and give more control over what's happening in the day-to-day environment. And visuals have no attitude, they have no tone, no frustration and no disapproval. And so often as well, for someone who has social communication difficulties, it's going to be really helpful just to have something practical that communicates in a practical and unemotive way. Visuals are transferable between environments and people, so they could be at home, school, they could be in a daycare centre, wherever you go, visuals are, whichever sort of visual or AAC you're using, can be transferred between different settings. And that's a really important element of them. So visuals, I think, as well, are something that evolves through a lifetime. So for example, a younger child might need things that are laminated and waterproof and sticky proof so that they can be wiped down easily, whereas that may be less relevant for an older person. They might be able to have a visual that's just a leaflet or something less sustainable depending on what their needs are. And visuals help kids see what you mean. So from the receptive side, if you're using visuals, will help children with their understanding. And they're also permanent, so they're something that people can reflect back on. So if a person's been interacting with you, they've got some kind of visual, very often that visual is permanent and they can reflect back on it when they need to. And also they allow time for processing, so for language processing and processing information. So there's some sort of background to why visuals can be so useful, both for communicating and supporting understanding, but then they're also essential for any sort of form of AAC that you might be using. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is just a little note on this, what we call the social model of disability, and it's thinking about communicating across different settings. So I think classically, definitely I think this was the case when I started working a very, very long time ago as a speech therapist, is the pressure was all on the individual to develop skills and to learn how to use their system of communication. So that might be signing or PECS, whatever the communication system was. The emphasis, I think, was very much on the individual with the disability. Whereas now, I think it's good news that the emphasis has moved very much onto the environment. And now within all sort of schools and settings, with people with communication difficulties who are following best practice, there is a strong emphasis that the environment needs to be adapted as much, if not more, than the individual needs to develop the methods of nonverbal communication. So it's not enough just to give the system to the individual. It's very, very important that all the other people within that environment and the physical environment is adapted so that that person can communicate effectively. So, for example, simple adapting environment may be things like reducing background noise, considering where someone is sitting for example, in class or when they're engaging in activities, the accessibility of the resources for communication, as well as the skills and training of the communicative partners. So it's not just the person who's got the disability that might need training in a particular AAC system, but that training also needs to happen for the communicative partners, be that teachers or carers or other family members. Can you move on to the next? So we've talked a bit about the verbals and adapting environment, but just to introduce to you, I'm sure a lot of these sort of different systems might be familiar to you, but this is just really to give you a flavour of how huge and how diverse any sort of AAC or non-verbal communication system may be. So it may not just be natural gestures or pictures, it might be a specific signing system. So I've put up Mr. Tumble, who's some of you may be familiar with, and I often recommend him as something to watch with young people when they're learning sign language, learning Makaton sign language, which is a sort of simplified form of sign language to support understanding and spoken language. So it could be a British Sign Language, a more formal signing system, a more complete language in itself. So that's obviously beyond natural gesture. They're actually using your hands to communicate much more specifically. And then it's more than just pictures. So I put up an example there on the right-hand side of something called an e-tran frame, which can be used with very young children right through to this picture, which is actually taken from the Stroke Association, where an adult who's struggling to communicate post a traumatic brain injury can use these letters and looking to spell out and try and communicate. And they can be quite a slow method, but they can be a real great way of starting to develop a more independent communication system for a child, and a great way for an adult to communicate if they lose the ability to use spoken language following a head injury or a stroke. And then both the sign language and the e-tran would be examples of what we call a low-tech AAC. And as with the bottom one there, I've got the teddy bear stuck next to the nursery. And this is really to show you, on the left, the nursery is a symbol. So that would be a symbol where you don't necessarily have to be able to read. You can just use the picture to help, or the symbol to help you understand or communicate what's going on. But this one's been set up as an object of reference. So the teddy bear, who's sort of looking slightly unhappily, hung next to nursery. In this scenario, the teddy bear is an object of reference. So for a young child, when they're going to go to nursery, they could be handed something like the teddy bear, and the touch and the feel and the whole sort of object of reference of that teddy bear will help them understand what's going to happen next. It helps them understand that they're going to go off to nursery. Equally, the young person could be taking an object of reference to communicate and show what they want to happen. So they could take the teddy bear and give it to someone to show that they understand that they've been to nursery that morning, and that's their way of telling their news. So objects of reference are another form of low-tech AAC. And then going clockwise in the bottom left-hand corner, just some examples of high-tech AAC devices, of which nowadays there really are hundreds and hundreds of them, and they are can be very, very simple through to really quite sort of simple systems used on an iPad or phone, right through to kind of complex purpose-built devices where you can have, I think you can see from those pictures, you can often have a huge vocabulary for someone to be able to communicate using a high-tech AAC. But one thing I did want to say is that research shows that the success of AAC, whether it's high-tech or low-tech, but particularly with high-tech AAC, depends on the communicative partner's training and knowledge of that device as much as it depends on the child or the young person using the device. So it's really, really important that with whichever system you use or that you're recommended, that you are given the support you need. And that takes me to the next slide, which is really just highlighting the importance of the team around your child. I think that when you're, this is when my son was born, I'd already been speech and language therapist for 10 years, and then I had my son was born with Down syndrome. So I had some professional knowledge, but straight away was being told by things like portage and health visitors about using Makaton with him and different methods to support his communication. And even as a professional coming from it, as with all the knowledge I had, because I'd actually worked with many families and with children with complex needs before my son was born, it was incredibly daunting and isolating and frightening, with a huge amount of pressure and often feeling guilty. Was I doing enough? Was I using enough signs or the right signs? Was I doing them in the right way? And sometimes some of the signing wasn't practical because you put your hands full with things or other children. So there was that constant feeling of feeling quite isolated and quite guilty and quite overwhelmed. And that's even with the knowledge that I already had from my professional experience. So I think I cannot emphasize enough that when you are looking at supporting a child with non-verbally, then you need to be feel able to tap into the team around you and work with them to support your child and to understand the different options available to help your child communicate. And if you're feeling isolated, please seek support, reach out to organisations such as Contact and ICANN and many charities and individuals who are there to support you, and don't just struggle on your own, because it can be very overwhelming. So thinking about links with specialist support, I think it's a good idea to reflect on what contact you do have with a speech and language therapist. Sometimes that can be quite limited, particularly at the moment. I know there's increasing pressure on services because of COVID and delayed waiting lists, but be insistent and keep reaching out to find the support through the speech and language therapy specialist service or specialist teacher and your SENCO, or for adults, reaching out to the adult services as well. Or if you're attending, or the person in your family who has a disability is attending a day centre or whichever organisation they're with, do shout out and put your hand up and say, reach out to people to get the help you need, and be persistent as well. And then when you found the team and you've gathered the team around you, think about what additional support is needed, how often, where it's going to happen, and who's going to deliver it. Do you need some really specialist input from the specialist AAC centre? For example, there's the French A in Bristol, or the Greater Ormond Street is another paediatric one. French A that works with adults and children, but a similar service is available across the UK in different settings. So do you need that level of specialism, and how can you get the referral and access what's needed? Or is it just that you need some Makaton training, or do you just need someone that you can touch base with as you're evolving a communication system for your child or your person that you're supporting? And then make sure that you have regular contact, and make sure there's a regular opportunities to update and identify where next, because communication is always evolving. It's even for adults, we don't you know, the way we talk, the language we use, the vocabulary we need changes every day depending on our interests and our emotional well-being. So it's not a static thing, and I think it's important to have regular reviews and regular opportunities to link in with professionals so that any communication system or any AAC can be updated and adapted as needed. How am I doing for time? I think I'm really there. So I'm just going to whiz through the last couple of slides. So just in summary, think about the specific programs or techniques that you've been given to develop your child's or your family members' non-verbal communication skills. What information do you need as a parent or carer? How are you involved, what's happening in school or in other settings, and what interventions are being used to support your child or your family member? So those are just some things to think about, to sort of put together the jigsaw puzzle that AAC can be, to make sure you have got the support that you need in order to make non-verbal communication effective for you and for the person that you're with. And so to sum up, I've just done a very visual, there we go, a non-verbal slide to finish, but just to show that sums up that non-verbal communication is very diverse, and there's lots of different methods and people can access it at all different ages. It's a huge topic, so I've done a lightning visit today, but I think my takeaway message was that it can be, it's very natural, that it's something that is very effective, but you do need to have specialist support and assessment and ongoing support so that you can communicate effectively with your non-verbal people. So yes, that's.
Thank you, Amanda. That was a whistle-stop tour, and that beautifully put together all the speeches that we've heard today. And so a big thank you, and keep up the great work as part of ICANN. We've just done some joint resources with you, yes. Amanda. Yeah, so we'll share that link to the resources.
Yeah, I've just seen them. They look fantastic, and I think actually we'll bring together a lot of what I've just said. They sort of,
we'll share the link to the new resources, Amanda. Thank you so much. And yeah, that's perfectly timed. And I'd just like to give some thanks to, first of all, everybody for coming today. That's been so great. A huge thanks to Katrina, who will be absolutely jiggered and has been amazing at keeping up with all of you. And Katrina is one of Nadia's PAs, which shows the standard of communication partners. And Katrina is a newly qualified interpreter. So we've tested you. A special thanks to all the speakers, and all the talks were so varied, they were informative, and it was really so great to hear from people who live and got the experience. Who use alternative ways to communicate. Great to hear from Tash and her experiences, and Geraldine and Charles and Nadia and Gregor, and of course Yvonne, Hannah, the One Voice and Joe, and Amanda. I will be sending out handouts to everybody and links, and when we work out how to do the YouTube, we'll send that out as well. And a special thanks to Pippa, who has coordinated this event, and she did the IT, so that is really awesome. So big thanks to Pippa. And the next event that we've got is 2 weeks today, and it's on staying strong, and that's about our resilience, our emotional well-being, our mental health. We've got some great speakers with lived experience coming to that, and some organizations and family members. So keep your eye on our Facebook page. We've got a group, so I can add you to that as well. And we will see you soon. And thank you all for being here. Pippa, would you like to end on anything?
Just a big thank you to everyone for coming. Just to echo Katie's words, and of course a big thank you to Katie. But thank you everyone for coming. It's been an amazing morning, and hope to see you all soon. Bye everyone.
Bye.
And please, I'll be in touch. Please do give us your feedback, but I will be in touch about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you, Hannah. Bye.
Hey, one quick thing. I'm going to amend my stories. I'll send you the amended story over.
Perfect. Perfect.
What I put on there.
Thank you, Tash.
All right,
See-
thank you very much.
See you soon, Tash. Thanks so much, Katrina.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, Nads.
Bye, Kalindi.
Bye,
Bye,
Kalindi.
Anne. Bye, Nads.
See you at the Pilates, Kalindi. Hi. We'll stop the recording. Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah.